In April 1925, a businessman handed over more than 1 million francs to buy the Eiffel Tower for scrap metal. The tower was never for sale, and the seller was so untouchable that 1 month later, he came back to sell it again. The seller called himself Count Victor Lustig. He held 45 aliases, spoke 5 languages, and police in 5 countries wanted him. He was born in 1890 in a small Bohemian town, the son of a tobacco salesman who once served as mayor. As a teenager, he started small, picking pockets in the street, and learned how easily attention could be steered elsewhere. Then he gave himself noble titles, Baron, first, later Count, and discovered that people rarely question a confident man's paperwork. By 18, he was working the card tables of Vienna. One victim said he could make a deck do anything but talk. From Vienna, he graduated to the ocean liners, crossing the Atlantic in first class, under a different name every voyage. His specialty there was selling wealthy passengers shares in Broadway productions that existed nowhere except in his beautiful leather portfolio. The liners taught him his craft. Pick the marks slowly, let them come to you, and never, ever look bored. They also taught him something darker. The perfect victim is not a fool. The perfect victim is someone who wants something badly. Remember that. Because in 1925, in a Paris hotel room, Victor Lustig opened a newspaper and found his masterpiece. The article said the Eiffel Tower was rusting. Repairs were expensive. Paint alone cost a fortune, and the city was struggling. The tower needed roughly 60 tons of paint every 7 years. The journalist even wondered whether Paris should simply sell it. It sounds absurd now, but the Eiffel Tower was built as a temporary exhibit for the World's Fair of 1889. Gustave Eiffel had paid most of the 7.8 million gold francs himself, just to get it built. Paris repaid him with fury. A petition called the tower a barbaric bulk. One famous writer called it a lanky pyramid. It was supposed to come down in 1909. Only its value as a radio tower kept the demolition away. During the First World War, it earned its keep, quietly listening to German transmissions from high above the city. But by 1925, the tower was 38 years old, unloved, expensive, and to one reader, absolutely perfect. Lustig hired a forger, commissioned stationery carrying the official French government seal, and wrote to the biggest scrap metal dealers in Paris. The letters invited them to a confidential meeting at the Hôtel de Crillon, a stone palace on the Place de la Concorde. 5 businessmen answered the call. Posing as a deputy director general of the postal ministry, Lustig delivered the news. Engineering faults, costly repairs, political problems he could not discuss. The Eiffel Tower would be torn down and sold for scrap. And one more thing, he said. Absolute secrecy, to avoid public outcry. That demand was not caution. It was a weapon. Lustig even took the dealers up the tower itself, flashing a forged access card and walking them past the queue. Paradonage. But he was not really giving a tour. From the 3rd floor, while they admired Paris, he was studying their faces. He was hunting for one specific weakness in the group, and he found it in a provincial businessman named André Poisson. Poisson was an outsider. He felt looked down on by the Parisian business elite, and he wanted, desperately, to finally belong. In French, poisson means fish, and Lustig had already decided exactly which one he was going to catch. He walked Poisson through Paris personally, pointing out buildings where he claimed the government conducted its secret business. Buying the Eiffel Tower would make Poisson the man who dismantled a landmark. 7,300 tons of iron, his name on it. Still, Poisson hesitated. Something felt slightly off. And this is where Lustig made the move that separates amateurs from masters. He took Poisson aside and confessed. He was just an underpaid government official, he said, entertaining rich clients in luxury hotels. If Poisson wanted the contract guaranteed, a little extra, off the books, would help. He was asking for a bribe. That flaw was the trap. Poisson knew officials were corrupt, and he reasoned that a con man would never ask for a bribe. So he paid, reportedly 1.2 million francs for the tower, plus 70,000 as the bribe. Then Lustig vanished. He surfaced in Vienna and did something strange. Every morning he bought the Paris newspapers and searched them, page by page. He was looking for his own crime. The headline never came. Day after day, the papers said nothing at all, because Poisson could not report it. Telling the police meant telling Paris he had bought the Eiffel Tower from a stranger. That was what the secrecy demand had really built. A victim whose own shame would work better than any getaway car. There is one more twist. That same year, the tower Lustig sold became the biggest illuminated billboard in the world. An automaker had covered it in lights. The monument nobody wanted was suddenly the most famous advertisement on Earth. So Lustig returned to Paris and ran the entire scheme again. New dealers, same hotel, same tower. This time, someone talked. The police were tipped off. The mark slipped away, and Lustig fled to the United States, one step ahead of them. There, he sold a Texas sheriff a wooden box that supposedly printed money. The sheriff tracked him all the way to Chicago. Cornered, Lustig calmly convinced the sheriff he was simply operating the box wrong, then paid him generous compensation in counterfeit bills. He reportedly even conned Al Capone himself during the Depression and walked away with both the money and his life. But even masters slip. In 1928, he simply stole $16,000 from a businessman's drawer, a bare theft. It was completely out of character, and the victim screamed to the police. For the first time, the law had a scent. A Secret Service agent named Peter Rubano, who had once trapped a notorious gangster, vowed to put Lustig behind bars. One of Rubano's colleagues later wrote that Lustig was the only man he ever heard of who swindled the law. Meanwhile, Lustig's counterfeiting grew into an operation so vast that agents said it threatened confidence in the American economy itself. In 1935, the Secret Service finally caught him. 20 years. Alcatraz. Not for the tower, for the fake money. At Alcatraz, officers wrote down what they believed was his real name, Robert Miller. Even his identity may have been a con. He left behind a list known as the 10 Commandments for con men. Rules like never look bored and never get drunk. But his real lesson is simpler. Lustig never sold the tower. He sold Poisson, a version of himself that finally mattered. Con is short for confidence. The best scams do not bypass your judgment. They recruit it, using what you already want. Victor Lustig died in prison in 1947. On his death certificate, a clerk listed his occupation with one word: salesman. He sold a tower with paperwork and a bribe. Next time, the man who went further and sold an entire country.